He seemed to be listening to something. So I did too. And I heard for a brief second what sounded like a distant, very muffled shriek. Oh. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Espoir David and today I'm going to play a game called Be My Muse. Don't mind if I do. A game where a painter really wants us to be their next portrait. I never liked crowds. I always avoided them when I could. Being with a few people was fine, but being in a large crowd full of strangers made me want to recede into myself. I used to draw a lot when I was in crowds, had a sketchbook and a pencil with me when I was in school or public areas. Sketching helped me pretend I wasn't uncomfortably close to a large number of people. Well, hey, I did that too. Eventually, I got into an art school, hoping that my years of doodles would be put to good use. I didn't expect that I would eventually be thrust back into a crowd again. Ooh. I had been in the school for over a year, and today many of the students were chosen to participate in an exhibition in the city's art museum. The exhibition was held with hopes to gain the interest and financial support of rich investors, and so the students had to present their best works for it. The art students had to submit a painting, the music students had to put on a recital, basically anything to show what you learned at the academy. Usually I like art museums, but not today. Not when I had to mingle with a crowd of overly dressed strangers who seemed to view our pieces as inferior. Some of my friends from the art school were here, but it didn't help much. I stayed at a corner of the room, near some empty seats where there were less people, hoping and praying that no stranger would come over and try to start a conversation with me. I was never good at small talk with unfamiliar people. My art piece is there among the rest of the students. The one with a man standing in the ocean with a dark stormy sky above. My name was under the painting, and it was Espoir. Espoir. It almost feels like it doesn't belong there. It's so plain and sad. I just could not find the right inspiration for it. I had no muse. My muse. My juice. The time limit and the anxiety of it being displayed here did not help. The more I looked at the painting, the more I hated it. I need to get out of this hall. The voices were deafening. There was too much movement. I moved stealthily to the large doors, dodging around people, and slipped into the quiet hallways. The sounds of voices and footsteps faded away quickly, almost too quickly. But I didn't mind. I was free. I could think clearly now. I began to make my way down the hall at a slow but steady pace. The air was cool, but felt nice after the heat of the crowd. But after a while, I noticed a rather stale smell in the air, like the smell of a building that's been left empty for a long time. The sound of fluorescent lighting above suddenly growing louder. Oh no. Maybe it was because there was no one around. I did not sign up for spooky. The paintings and sculptures on display looked unfamiliar. But perhaps this was an old wing of the art museum I had never been to despite my frequent visits. The carpet and wallpaper did seem on the older side. Oh no, is this going to be Ebe? Is this going to turn into Ebe? I better not find any roses. I heard something. A voice? Better not be. A song? Someone was singing, their voice echoing eerily down the corridor. It was a beautiful voice, deep and rich. They sang a song that sounded like a distant memory, something familiar but from a time that no longer existed. I suddenly noticed that I had been completely still, gazing in the direction of where the voice seemed to be coming from. I had been standing stiff, arms rigidly raised slightly in a defensive pose. It was as if I was transfixed by the unusual voice. How long have I been standing here? The voice seemed to be getting closer. Spooky! A figure materialized down the hallway, hazy in the darkness. I couldn't make out any details aside from this person being very tall. A pang of fear shot through me. Oh yeah, that would be terrifying! Absolute, just pure fear. But I couldn't leave. The voice grew steadily louder, the song more wild. I didn't want to leave. I only could watch as the figure drew closer. Hey, Espoir! Finally, I told you Espoir was fine. The familiar voices seemed to unstiffen my body. I turned around. Almost instantly the voice stopped. It didn't just fade away, but rather cut off like a radio being turned off or unplugged. Spooky! Hey, guys, I think I might have witnessed some paranormal activity. My closest friend, Estelle, was making her way down the corridor, holding up her dress a little so it wouldn't drag on the carpet, and running as fast as her heels would allow her to. Seeing her, I felt a wave of relief. However, the relief was cut short at the sight of Salvador. He stood further down the corridor, arms folded, and with a grimace on his face. Don't you be mad at me, sir. I had a breakdown. I had a nervous anxiety breakdown, and I needed some air. I instinctively returned his disgusted expression. Espoir, please don't run off like that again. I got worried when I couldn't find you back at the exhibition. I went around asking everyone where you went. She spoke in her usual, quick, excited way, but there was a frantic look in her eyes as she clasped her hands dramatically. 2 students just left the exhibition without telling anyone, and no one could find them anywhere. I was so worried when you weren't in the hall, too. Those 2 probably ran off to make out somewhere in the museum or something. I don't get why everyone is so worried. Sal spoke in a low, frustrated voice. Also, Espoir, don't think I'm here willingly. Estelle dragged me out here to look for you. I saw you leaving the hall, which you know we were told not to leave when the exhibition is on, so you're lucky I didn't tell our professors. I told her I saw you. Then she demanded I go with her to find you. I didn't demand or drag you, Sal. You agreed to look for Espoir with me. What? I did not. You actually care about me, Sal. You told me you visit this museum often, so you knew your way around, and that you knew which wing Espoir liked to visit, and... A full-blown argument was brewing. Estelle seemed to be keeping her dignity, but Sal's face was growing slightly red. Aw. Look, are we done here? We should just go back to the hall. I'm pretty sure it's almost time for the recital. We have a few songs to perform, and you better not blow out your voice before it. Oh, the recital. Yes, okay. Come on, Espoir. You promised you would listen to me sing, right? You can stand near the doors if you feel uncomfortable with so many people around and just listen. I'll come see you when the recital is over, and we can find a nice quiet place to just sit and talk, okay? I nodded with a grateful smile. It was a blessing to have an understanding friend like Estelle. We've been friends for years, even though she was far more extroverted than I was. We got along well, able to cater to our different interests. There were times I did wonder if it was all right if we could be something more. I did wonder what it would be like to spend our lives together. Aww. But I didn't dare ask her. I was happy with our friendship, and, after some mulling over it, felt that it would be best to wait for her to return the feelings so it wouldn't be so awkward. I'm going back to take care of my baby. Better make sure it's all tuned up for the recital. Do you really still call your violin a baby? I could not help saying. Yes, because it is. It's my most prized possession. I'm leaving now. Better come back to the hall before anyone misses you. Or don't. I don't care. With that spiel, Sal turned on his heels and strode back to the recital hall. I suddenly noticed that the corridor around me looked familiar again. The carpets were the same carpets and wallpapers I have seen throughout this area of the museum. The paintings were the ones I passed by many times during my visits. There was no longer the musty smell or the loud fluorescent lights. What was that all about? I didn't have time to wonder about it. Estelle was already ushering me back to the hall, holding me by one arm, excitedly talking over what we could get for dinner that night once the event was over. The recital went smoothly. I stood at one of the doors of the hall, away from the crowds, listening and gazing at the stage. Estelle sang with the rest of the singers. I could just pick out her lovely voice from the rest of the voices. She could not get the coveted solo parts of the medley, which she had expressed disappointment in. But, as it was, she seemed happy to be able to sing to an audience. Her eyes shined, and the subtle smile on her face made the song sound even happier to me. Singing was her joy in life, and it was pleasant to see her enjoying herself on stage. Sal was with the rest of the orchestra, playing on his precious violin. I could just see him from where I stood. He sat among the other violinists, not standing out at all. Even though we hadn't been on good terms for many years, I couldn't help admiring his passion for music. He seemed almost lost in his playing, eyes transfixed on the conductor with a small smile on his face. Oh. It wasn't his usual infuriating smug smile, but a serene, joyful one, like he was happy to be where he belonged. Eventually the medley ended. I was expecting an eruption of applause, but the crowd was only generous enough to give a moderately loud, almost daintily sounding ovation. This really was a tough crowd to please, perhaps feeling that us students were below their refined taste. Or maybe most of them were still holding champagne glasses in their hands and didn't want to put them down. It was now time for refreshments to be served. As tempting as the food and drink provided was, I felt too sick in the stomach to weave my way through the crowd so that I could reach the tables. Oh, not me. My social anxiety is not going to keep me away from food. Not only because of the crowd, but also because the next event scheduled would be presenting our paintings. And I was not looking forward to being paraded in front of the crowd with my measly-looking painting, especially a crowd with such a superiority in artistic taste. After some hesitation, I once again slipped out through the doors and to the hallway beyond. I was only planning to stay in the corridor outside of the exhibition hall, maybe sit on a bench nearby and wait for Estelle. However, something immediately caught my ear. Singing. The same voice from before, and it was much nearer. It seemed to be coming from right around the corner. Curious, and also rather irritated that I was so frightened of a mere voice, I decided to confront this mysterious singer. I strode over and rounded the corner in a sharp turn, and ran face first into someone I'd never met before. Oh my! The singing stopped instantly, and he let out a small yelp as something clattered to the floor. Oh no! Wait, dude, your eyes! Your eyes! They look so cool! I took a step back, surprised by this unexpected meeting. Oh no! Fangs! Oh dear! The man gazed back at me. He was so tall that I had to raise my head just to look at his face. In a quick second I took in his appearance. White formal suit, gold accessories including a pair of gold-rimmed glasses with shaded glass, long black hair with streaks of white in it. He looks very cool. His clothing seemed to imply that he was here to watch the recital as well, looking like one of the rich, well-dressed investors. However, the way that he presented his attire was strange, with his suit shirt being mostly unbuttoned, his jacket hanging off his right shoulder, and his hair looking a bit wild. Glorious pecs, sir. I couldn't pinpoint what it was exactly, but something seemed to be very off about him. Oh, I don't know. It could be the black the whites of his eyes are black. My apologies. His voice was as deep and mellifluous as his singing voice. Even when he was simply apologizing, his voice felt pleasant to the ears. He knelt down and reached out to some objects with his left hand, and I suddenly noticed that I had caused him to drop a box of paints and brushes after running into him. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. I knelt down and began to help pick up the scattered paints and brushes. In a minute, we managed to put everything back into his box, which he shut with a click. I'm sorry for running into you like that. I stammered awkwardly. I was still not good at talking to strangers. There is no need to apologize. It was simply an accident, was it not? He grinned at me as he spoke. Yeah, and, you're singing. I felt annoyed at myself for being so awkward and being unable to get a full sentence out. Oh, yes. Do you have any qualms about my singing? Oh, no, I was just wondering. I heard you singing earlier, somewhere else in the museum, and I was just, well, trying to find you? I couldn't find the words to fully express what I wanted to ask him. Oh. He beamed, his face brightening up with a look of joy and satisfaction. I am delighted that you were so drawn to my singing that you wish to search for me. If you are questioning why I was singing, I was hired at the very last second as a replacement singer for one who could not make it to this exhibition. I was simply practicing when you heard me. Oh, well, I'm Espoir, and, you don't need to practice alone down a dark, empty hallway. The other singers were all practicing in a separate room. My friend Estelle was practicing earlier. I can take you there, if you like. Yes, that is true. Well, I appreciate your concern greatly, but it is simply that I do not like crowds much, and have a preference for seclusion and silence. I much rather practice alone. It was my turn to brighten up. Oh, same. I mean, I don't like crowds either. That's why I'm out here. Ah, such a coincidence. Perhaps I could take you away from the crowd for a bit. I have been searching for a muse for an art piece I wish to paint after all. Oh, right, he was carrying a box of paints and brushes. Very good quality ones, too, from what I saw scattered on the floor. Oh, I thought you were a singer. Indeed I am, but I possess skills in painting, too. I adore any form of art, any genre of creation, and have some capability in each of them. Singing, painting, sketching, sculpting, playing instruments, writing, acting. I couldn't tell if he was bragging or not, especially with his odd, slightly arrogant way of speaking. However, his confidence and his deep, soothing voice made me believe every word he said. However, before each art piece can be made, I require a muse, an inspiration, something that will spark within me an idea to create. Oh, yeah, I can relate to that. I sighed, thinking about my painting back in the hall and the many failed art pieces I have made over the years. And you, my dear, shall be an excellent muse. Why'd the music stop? I had been looking down for most of the conversation, as I didn't like making eye contact. However, this made me jerk my head back to look up at him in pure surprise. What? Beep. It was at that moment where I finally locked eyes with him, and I noticed how strange his eyes were. How did I not notice his bright golden eyes and black sclera before? I gazed at him, my eyes transfixed on both from the surprise and from his unearthly yet ethereal eyes. I wish to create a painting inspired by you. I do hope that is all right, and that you will agree. But why me? I mean, I'm not particularly attractive or interesting. The man's expression softened. You are beautiful. Perhaps you do not see that yourself, but in my eyes you have a charm to you, a deep allure. You have inspired me greatly when I gazed upon you. Please, will you be willing to be my muse? Several feelings were stirred up in me from his words. I was flattered, but also in disbelief. However, I also felt a deep sense of fear, although I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was making me nervous. I've always wanted to inspire people with my art, I guess, like a lot of artists do. This wasn't exactly what I had in mind, since you haven't seen my art yet. Oh, but I have. Yours is the painting of a man standing in the waves by the sea. It's absolutely gorgeous, and the way you painted the sea. It reminds me of a far lovelier time. I felt my cheeks growing red. I mean, thank you so much. I think it's horrible. I mean, not as good as everyone else's, but I really appreciate it. I guess, yeah, if you want to use me as an inspiration, I could help out. Excellent. The man was overjoyed, raising his deep voice much louder than before, and immediately turning around in a single motion, just brrr. He began hurriedly walking down the hallway while he still spoke. "Come along now, I have a canvas ready in another room." "Wait, I promised to wait for Estelle." "Please do not concern yourself with her for now, or your other friend Salvador either. We must get to painting this instant while the inspiration is fresh." "He isn't my friend, but hey, wait!" I was now running down the hall after him. He was so tall that each stride he took was almost twice the distance I could cover in one step. I don't even know you yet. We just met and...
"Ah, yes. I have yet to introduce myself. How terribly rude of me."
He spoke with the same calmness he did before, despite him moving so quickly along the corridors.
"My name is Zacharias...
Masin? That is a very interesting name."
"A pleasure to make your acquaintance."
Masin? As in, the Greek goddess of memory? Editor, may please put up how I'm supposed to pronounce that.
Mnemosyne.
I spoke hurriedly between quick breaths, as I was barely able to keep up with him. He turned to me and grinned, showing his strangely sharp teeth, while still keeping up his rapid pace.
"Ah, of course. You used to have a fascination with Greek mythology during your adolescence, yes? You had quite the collection of books on Greek mythology."
"Sir? You seem to know a lot."
"I'm delighted that you are so well learned in such matters."
How did you know that? Sir? Before I could finish my question, Zacharias came to a sudden stop, and I almost ran face first into him again. He held me steady with one hand before I could fall over, his touch surprisingly gentle. He then turned and opened an old door made of dark, heavy wood. As he did, I once again noticed that we were in a section of the art museum that seemed wholly unfamiliar. The carpet and the wallpaper were unusual. I don't recall the museum having such large, old doors. The stale smell was back, and I could once again hear the buzzing of electric lights above me. He ushered me into the room, leaving the doors slightly ajar behind us, which I was silently relieved that he did. The room was large, with lovely carpeting and wallpaper, but it was bare. I turned to him in confusion. He simply raised his hand and snapped his fingers. "Oh!" Instantly, several objects materialized in the room. The center of the room now had a canvas and a stand, a small table beside it, and a comfortable armchair opposite the canvas. I stood, frozen, completely dumbfounded. I think it's Zacharias, actually. "I don't know." Zacharias motioned for me to sit on the armchair, which I did with some hesitation, and even then I still sat and stared at him in confusion. He took his place in front of the canvas, setting down his box on the table beside the canvas, which I noticed already had paints, brushes, pencils, a cloth, and a glass of clean water. It seemed that he was already fully prepared for this moment. I could feel faint alarm bells going off in my head, but for some foolish reason, I didn't try to get away. I was still startled by his ability to make things appear from thin air. Yeah, that is a bit suspicious. Aside from that, it felt as if the moment he began speaking to me, my mind was in a slight haze.
"First of all, I'd like to make some sketches."
Zacharias replaced the canvas with a large sketch pad, propping it up on the stand and picking up a pencil. Sketches? Of me?
"Yes, but also sketches that are inspired by you, you see. It is not just one's appearance that can act as a muse for art, but rather one's experiences, what one has seen and felt throughout one's life."
I don't really get it.
"Well, say that if you were to create a painting according to a specific theme, you would create something different from other artists who were given the same task. Your style and what you place upon your canvas would be inspired by your own experiences, which would be vastly different from the other artists, yes?"
Yeah, I see what you mean. Zacharias had begun sketching. He sketched with his left hand, still keeping his right arm beneath his jacket. Oh, yeah.
My dear Muse, I do hope it's all right to call you that. I draw from such experiences to create my art. One's memories, one's past, is an excellent source of inspiration. With your knowledge of Greek mythology, you should know the relation between the goddess Mnemosyne and the 9 Muses.
Yeah, she was their mother, right?
Correct. Art and the creation of art requires memory, both your own and the memories of others. You create based on what you've learned, as well as what you or people around you have experienced. Memories are something I value a lot, something I hold on to, something I wish to witness more of.
What exactly do you mean by that last bit? Zacharias let out a small laugh. This was the first time I heard him laugh, and it was almost as lovely and musical as his singing.
Oh, my Muse, worry not about that. Simply rest on the armchair and allow me to complete my work.
I didn't know how to respond. Zacharias began to hum as he drew. Now and then he would lean out from behind the stand to peek at me. Every time he did, I noticed how he had a soft, tender smile. He had a look of pure joy, almost bliss, as he worked. But now and then his smile curved a little more, and his eyes were full of longing. His loving expression became that of desire, almost hunger. "Sir?" At this point, I should have stood up and left. I should have made a silly excuse and got out of the room, back to the hall, which felt far safer despite the crowd. But no, I simply sat on the couch, listening to his humming silently, almost as if in a daze. I don't know how long I stayed in that armchair. At some point, Zacharias switched out his sketchbook for the canvas and had begun painting. Time didn't seem to matter to me at the moment.
My Muse, have I ever told you how beautiful you are?
He suddenly said. He sounded a little dreamy, sighing as he spoke. You did. I muttered my answer without much thought.
How would you feel about becoming my Muse for much longer? I am capable of far more than simply art pieces. There are many more things that I can create, and I wish for you to be a part of them.
I didn't reply.
Will you stay for just a little longer? I can provide you with anything you desire. It would be a pleasant stay. I have been alone for a dreadfully long time, and it does get rather lonely with...
Suddenly, Zacharias' entire body stiffened. His left arm shot rigidly to the side, causing him to make a stray stroke of paint across his canvas and knock over the glass on the table. Oh no! It fell to the ground and broke into a few pieces. The noise made me sit up, blinking like I had just been woken up from a daydream. Zacharias was standing completely still. He faced away from me, and while I could only see part of his face, his expression looked uncomfortably dark. He seemed to be listening to something. So I did too. And I heard, for a brief second, what sounded like a distant, very muffled shriek. Oh.
Oh, goodness me, I seem to have knocked over my paint water.
Zacharias' expression had snapped back to his usual cheerful grin, so quickly that I wondered if I had only imagined his dark expression.
What, sir? Excuse me, my Muse. I must remove these glass shards and obtain a new glass. No need to help me,
he said quickly as I made a motion to stand up.
Please, remain seated. I shall only be gone for a minute or so.
He bent down to carefully pick up the broken glass and headed towards the door. Before he left, he turned and said to me, in a far lower voice than he had ever used before,
Remain seated.
Yes. The reply left my lips before I even thought about it. After he left, I did obediently stay in the chair for a while, staring off into space. A few minutes passed before I began to wonder how I got here in the first place. It felt almost difficult to retrieve any memories, even recent ones. Although I did notice that the haze in my mind was beginning to clear up slightly. Ever since Zacharias left and I no longer heard his voice, I was able to think a little clearer. I tried to remember how I came here. I followed him down a corridor which looked different from the rest of the art museum. Oh, right. I was at the art museum. I was here for an exhibition, and my friend Estelle was here too. Estelle! I promised to meet her after her recital, and yet I was here, staying for who knows how long in a room with a complete stranger who wanted to paint me for some reason. I had to go find her, and also tell Zacharias that I had to leave. Although I had an uncomfortable sensation at the back of my mind that he might not be happy with it. I got up from the armchair. As I did, I happened to glance at the canvas on the stand. A sudden pang of curiosity struck me, even though I knew I had to look for Estelle. My fascination for art got the better of me. I wanted to see what Zacharias had drawn. I walked over to the canvas. On it was an unfinished portrait of myself, marred by the stray stroke of paint he made. It was uncannily lifelike, and also beautiful, even though it was incomplete and lacked shading or lighting. I admired his careful brushstrokes and how exact the proportions were. I then flipped open the sketchbook he left on the table. There were sketches of me. Many, many sketches. Far too many for him to have drawn in the time I was sitting there. Sketches of me doing things around my home, sketches of me eating food I enjoyed, sketches of me in class, sketches of me sleeping in my bed. There were even sketches of my childhood home, and all of them were perfect replicas of my appearance and those locations. I slammed the book shut, feeling disturbed. I had to get out of here. Silently, I made my way to the door and looked out. The corridor still looked unfamiliar. I almost swore it changed a little from before. I don't recall it being this long or dark. Suddenly, I heard two voices in the distance. Estelle and Salvador. I had to warn them about Zacharias. I don't think they have anything to... What? Oh no! Oh no! Oh, that was fun. That was lovely. I like that. I would love to see more of that. Yes, please. More of that, please. Yes. Zeki. Can I call you Zeki? Do you have a little crush on me? I love a man who loves art and has a nice smile. Well, that was Be My Muse, and, oh boy, that looks very fun. I would like to know what happens next. Well, there will be a link in the description where you can follow this developer for any updates to this game. I know I will. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Take care of yourself. Have a great night. And remember, there is always hope.